Word. All right, so now I'm recording. All right, so welcome. I'm now the host of my own meeting, which is always sort of a nice feeling. So what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to switch over and introduce our guest speaker. So our guest speaker is going to be Vince Surra. So Vince has actually 3 years of lean experience, so relatively new to the field, but pretty powerful. So he's the majority of his time has been spent in lean healthcare as a facilitator and a director, and he's currently director of operations for LSS medical centers. So with that, I want you to welcome Vince. And Vince, are you there? I think if you start talking, you'll become center screen for us. Should track your voice.
Okay, if it happens automatically, that's good. Oh, did something happen with my computer here? That's good.
Well, let's see. I am not. I hear your voice. I'm looking. We got your video. Okay, so Vince, I think you're good.
Okay.
So let's see. Hold on. I got a button here that says, okay, I'm switching to active speaker. So you're now the active speaker. There we go. We're good.
Okay.
All right, Vince, so welcome. So I got a few questions for you here to get us sort of started. And, it's always nice to speak to another lean expert about all things lean here. So what's your current position? What's your current position and what's its relationship to lean?
Well, right now, as you said, I'm the director of operations for LSS medical centers. Oh, by the way, you hear me fine, right?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
So, and actually, LSS doesn't even have a lean operation yet. I've been here for 5 weeks. I came from community health centers where I was the director of lean operations there. And one of the reasons I came over and moved over here into this position was this is a smaller company. We have about 200 employees, 15 clinics, and I'm going to be in charge of the operations of all those clinics. So I will be bringing lean principles into this healthcare practice as soon as I'm able to do this. At 4 weeks, you're still learning what you're doing, before you start making any major changes. But that is one of the reasons I came on board, was to help them bring in the lean operations. Okay.
And so like what is that going to look like for an organization? Does that mean you're going to hire a director or what is, do you know where you're going at this point?
The truth is I'm 5 weeks in. I don't know what this is going to look like 6 months from now. Most likely there'll be some dedicated staff, whether it's just a lean facilitator of some sort or an actual director of lean. I'm not sure. It'll probably start small and we'll have a facilitator, and we'll begin doing Kaizen events, and we'll begin using some of the tools, and then it'll grow from there. As this company grows, lean will grow.
Okay, but you got good buy-in from the leadership, it sounds like, just the fact that they hired you, right?
Well, I was going to say, the reality for me is I am leadership now. So I am, the owner of the company put me in charge of essentially everything. So he wants lean, he knows he needs it. So now it's just a matter of me figuring out how to make it work in this company with the culture. Of course, you can't, and that's, you have to be careful whenever you get into a new company. You've got to learn the culture before you start making a bunch of changes.
Right. Excellent. Good.
But definitely, the nice part is the buy-in is coming from me, and I already bought in. So it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're convinced. I can see that. So tell us a little bit about your lean journey, right? So like, where does it start for you? How do you get into it? Okay. You seem to have moved pretty fast, right? So
I did. So basically, I was the quality director at community health centers. I spent 8 years doing reports and quality improvement sort of stuff, but without lean, just old school PDCA cycle improvements and some documentation, a lot of running reports. In healthcare, a lot of what we do is, reporting to the government on various factors. So a lot of this was running reports, making some improvements. Over the last couple of years at CHC, I spent 8 years doing that. Then I spent 2 years in operations. So several years ago, we decided as a company that we were going to try to implement lean in healthcare. They came to me and said, we didn't know honestly what we were doing. So they came to me and said, Vince, you have the QI background, you understand data, you understand people, you're motivational, and you're operational. We think we want you to move into lean. And I actually was very hesitant to take the job because I didn't know what lean was, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be a flavor of the day, and 6 months from now I'm in a new job. So, but I took it anyway, got into it. They hired a company, Simpler Health Consulting, to come in, and they hired a full-time, what they call Gemba coach, to come in and work with me, literally full-time for a year. And this guy was not easy on me at all. I think I mentioned that to you one time.
Yeah.
Yes. He was very hard on me. And he taught in the same way that he says he learned from the Japanese, which meant basically, you know, I was standing in circles and looking for waste. I was, there was no such thing as starting a meeting even 10 seconds late. You know, it was, everything was on time. Everything had to have data behind it. It was a lot to get used to, especially knowing my company in healthcare, we weren't really ready for what we were getting into. We really weren't. And I mean, to be honest with you, 3 years in, and they're still not, we're not super good at it yet. But what they did was, I have to admit, I didn't like the guy very much that they gave me, but he taught me a lot, and he taught me very quickly. They threw me right in. Within my first month, I had to run a Kaizen event. I hadn't even been a lean facilitator for 3 weeks, and I was facilitating my first Kaizen event. I had no knowledge of what I was doing at all. I fumbled through the week. I got it done. I'd say we had some successes, but more failures. And then over the course of the next year, we ran a Kaizen event every month, a 1 week Kaizen event, on schedule, on target. And my job as facilitator of those events was, of course, prep, run the event, and then follow up. Prep, run the event, follow up. And I did that for a year almost by myself, well, with the help of a coach. At the end of that year, we hired a team, yay, to help me. And I became the director of lean operations and moved into a whole different role. Now I was in charge of training 5 new facilitators on how to do what I had been doing for a year. And I spent the next year and a half doing that before I came over to this company here. So my journey did happen quickly because of what was warranted, which was the company we needed to go. I don't know if your students know this, but the healthcare environment is changing very, very, very quickly. So when Obamacare, the ACA, rolled out, we had to change our operations immediately. So that's why there was such a push for me to be in this position.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So mainly your training came from direct mentoring,
right?
Books, no training classes.
Of course, reading books, webinars, seminars. I have no formal education like a program such as yours. I have, I was beaten over the head for.
Learn it on the streets, which is a good way to learn it, right?
Right.
So Vince, what's your current lean challenge? Right, you said you're sort of in the startup mode, but is it like learn the culture is the lean challenge, or is there?
No, I'd say not just learning the culture, actually creating the new culture. I think that's going to be the hardest part. What I'm learning already, I'm 5 weeks into this company, is that, and it's probably any company that doesn't have some sort of they have no formal real quality program, no formal process improvement program. So the way they operate right now is someone sees a problem and somebody decides this is the fix, and they just do it. And there's very little analysis about whether or not that was the right fix, whether or not that was even the right problem. So getting people to slow down and get data is going to be a very big culture change for these people. And they're already, I'm 5 weeks in, I'm sure I'm frustrating people already because I ask a lot of questions before we make decisions, which is not something that these guys are used to. So I think my biggest challenge in this particular company is going to be making them understand that there is a need for gathering information and data before you make decisions to find root cause. And the reality is, so far, 5 weeks into my job, more than 50% of what I've done in this role so far is fix mistakes that were made because of bad decisions before I got here. Mm-hmm. So once they understand how much time and effort gets put into that, they're going to understand that getting data up front is a big deal. And of course, in the lean culture, you make database decisions. So and that's just not something that's happening here at all.
Right. Okay, good. So, what's your, so we all have these, what are your greatest lean success story, or you can give us a failure story, and what'd you learn? So
Okay.
success or failure, what'd you learn?
All right. So I'll tell you what, my biggest takeaway so far in my years in lean, as a quality director, a lot of the tools have been around for years in some format, right? So it's not like this is some amazingly new concept that just came out. There are some tools that are helpful more in the lean world than in the quality world, and that's good. But my biggest takeaway was the people part of this, was the buy-in from the Gemba, from the people that do the job. So when I ran probably my third or fourth Kaizen event, I still hadn't really bought into the entire lean concept. Really, to be honest with you, I was still, I was looking at lean as essentially another quality program that I've got to deal with and learn a bunch of new stuff, right? So that's how I was viewing it. And what happened was we had a Kaizen event, and on the last day of the event, this medical assistant that we had literally started bawling, just crying, And I had to kind of go over there and console her, which is not something I'm good at. But I went over there and tried my best. I pulled her out of the room, and I asked her what was wrong. And she was crying. She said, "Nobody has ever asked my opinion before." And that was it. She was bawling. So that aha moment started to hit me, where involving the people that work on the front line is more powerful than just improving a process. It's about improving morale and getting buy-in. This is the culture we're trying to create. So I became, right at that moment, sort of a culture guy when this is what I want to do. So when you talk about successes and failures, I could talk about we improved processes that saved hundreds of thousands of dollars for CHC. Actually, the reality is when I left, we had a benefits tracker that was up to about $1.2 million that we had saved through process improvement. But I don't even consider that my biggest success. I think the biggest success is the fact that hundreds of workers on the front line felt empowered to improve their workplace. And that, in my mind, was the biggest success I've had in lean. And that's the success I'm hoping to see here. 177 employees, I should be able to see the same kind of results here very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's great. So we all have, maybe sort of what I call favorite go-to tools. So do you have like a favorite tool that, tends to show up in all your Kaizen events, or things that you do, or what?
Okay, I do. Well, my go-to tool, okay, I have a couple we all have the couple. I actually had a sensei tell me that lean tools, I don't know if you've ever heard it described this way, but a sensei told me this. I used to wrestle in high school and a little bit in the Air Force. And he asked me, he said, "How many wrestling moves did you know?" And I said, "Oh, a lot, probably more than 100. He said, "Right, well, how many did you use regularly?" "Well, about 10. And he said, "When you were in trouble in the middle of a match, how many did you have that were go-tos?" And it was like 3. That's it. 3 moves is what you go back to because they're your best moves. Yeah. And he taught me, he said, lean tools are the same way. There's hundreds of them. There's about 10 you're going to use on a regular basis, but there's 3 that when you're in desperate need, you call them. Right? Yeah. That's kind of how he described it to me. So one of those for me is a problem countermeasure board. And there's different versions of this out there, but essentially, and hang with me, it's the idea that, again, the frontline employee, you put it out there right where the process is happening and allow them to identify those daily challenges they have. And then you challenge them to come up with the countermeasure, the solution.
Okay.
So basically the idea is you're empowering employees at the front level, and sometimes it's little stuff, and who cares if it's little stuff, but sometimes you get really big, good ideas that come out of these boards. So number one, and this is not a Kaizen event, it's just a tool that I was taught to use that I've already implemented here at my new job, and people already think I'm crazy because there's this piece of paper that says problems and countermeasures and date that you want to implement this by, and so that's number one. My number 2 though is a gimbal walk, and that's because I learned quickly. Well, I shouldn't say quickly. It took me 10 years because what I learned was when I learned lean was us leaders make decisions in our offices. I have this nice office around me, and I make decisions here, and they're not always the best decisions. So again, you'll see I always go back to the people. This is kind of my thing now. So I always kind of go back to where should the decisions get made at the front line. So a gimbal walk puts you on that front line. And then as far as event tools, the root cause analysis is a big deal. It's something that when I was a quality improvement guy, I did not do well. And I didn't realize that I didn't do well until I learned lean tools. And I had a lean sensei that taught me how to do root cause analysis way better than I ever learned before. So what I've learned now is that if you do good root cause analysis, you don't have to do it again. So you can solve it now forever. So
what do you think? What do you think you were doing before, Vince? That wasn't quite right. So root cause analysis, 5 whys seems real straightforward. Or
well, what's funny is I never had even used 5 whys. That was a tool that I learned in Lean. I'd never used that as a quality director.
Okay.
We always went back to the old Ishikawa, and I never really used it all that good because it's a little complicated. Nobody ever truly taught me to use it. I just sort of tried to figure it out by getting some internet tools. But besides that, what I would do is take the easy road. You always, I think it's a natural human thing that you already have a predefined notion of what you think is the problem. And so somehow you can gear those tools to go right back to what you believe the problem is. Like, you just hire another person and we'll be fine. And then you do that and you realize you're not fine because you didn't really do real root cause analysis and go back to it. And a part of that is having data that supports your root cause analysis. So that's something that even here at this job already, that's the big question I ask everybody is, where's your data to support that statement? Because I was just on a conference call for the hour before I got on this, and what you get is people that say, we need blah, 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 we need blah, blah, blah. And my question is, what's the data to support that? And you cause people to just stop in their tracks and retreat because they don't actually have data. They're just going with the first thing they thought of, and that's what they need.
All right, good. So at this point, Vince, we're about, I guess, 18 minutes in. I'm going to turn it over and ask our students if they have any questions for you. And if students could go ahead and raise their hands, I'll go ahead and recognize them. But might have to give them a second or two to get engaged, figure out where their hand-raising button is and all that sort of stuff. So if you have any questions for Vince, let's go ahead and raise a hand. So I got 2 hands raised. Let me see if I click that button, get the hand raised. Okay, so Cassie, why don't you go ahead and start us off? What's the question for Vince?
So Vince, you mentioned your first tool that you used. You said problem something, and I couldn't catch it.
Okay, I call it a problem countermeasure board. And if you look it up, there's different versions you can find online. I got this, the particular version I like to use, I've actually made adjustments to it myself. It's sort of my own tool now. But this came from Simpler Consulting had given me the first version that I used. And again, what's nice about it is it's simply a tool if you really think about what it's meant to be. Because I like to look at the meaning in the tools more than the tools themselves. And the meaning in that problem countermeasure board is if you were looking at a board that has metrics, then if your metrics are not, if you're not meeting your target goals, you should be asking the question why, right? So why are we not seeing 25 patients today? Why did we only have 23 today? And so there should, if used correctly, someone should write what happened that day. What was the problem? What caused you to not meet your goal? And then the countermeasure is what could we do differently tomorrow to try to meet our goal? And usually you have some countermeasure and a date, and somebody, you always have to have somebody who's responsible. That's one of the key fields, who's going to actually do this. And then, of course, the result. Did it work or not? Because if it didn't work, that's fine. That's just, you're one step closer to getting something that does work, and the next day you do it again. So in my previous job, we used those instead of just on metrics boards. We actually put them up in every sort of section of the clinic. So the front office had one, the medical assistants had one, the providers had one. So instead of just metrics, we went to everything. We said, if you're having any problem, anything that pulls you out of your normal daily functions, then it should be written on the problem countermeasure board because it was a problem. So if you had to leave the room from a patient to go find a piece of paper that wasn't there that should have been there, that should be on the problem countermeasure board because we want to know if we can solve that problem.
Yeah.
And so it's a problem countermeasure board.
Okay. Yeah, Vince, I know one of the things I really like, one of my go-to tools is a check sheet right? Which is sort of the thing where you identify problems and you're counting the frequency.
Okay, right.
Off on this, but ultimately, if you can get your culture and your organization so that they're jumping on those problems right away,
Yes.
I like that as a tool. So
what you just said is a good point. Just so you know, I had, like, for example, computer issues, right? The EHR goes down, and that would happen everywhere. So what happens is I would go to some clinics and they've got this listed 10 times, right? So I would tell them, stop listing it. Stop putting it on the problem countermeasure board. Now you need to Pareto this. This is a whole new thing.
Right, it's time.
And you've got to figure out how often is it happening? Right. Was it occurring only in certain rooms? Like, this is a bigger problem now than what should be on that. So you're right. There's things that, the way we worked it at CHC, it's interesting. We started with the problem countermeasure board. That was our foundation for improvement, okay? Some of the things got pulled off of that board, and they became PDSAs, we call them. So they became process improvement cycles that were a little larger projects. And then if they were very large projects, we went to the A3 thinking tool. So then it became a team project. Okay. So the foundation was the PCMB, problem countermeasure board, and the PDSA project, and then an A3 project.
Right. Cool. All right. So we got a question. So Mike, you got a question?
Yeah. So I had two questions, actually. The first question would be, I guess we'll get this one out of the way. Where would be the best place to find lean experienced professionals such as yourself? So where do people go to look when they want to introduce lean into their organization?
You know what? I'm actually not 100% sure. We went to conferences, which is where we met the people we met. And I know there's lean conferences. I'm sure you can Google, they're all over the country. I know we have Cal Poly as our resource locally, and we use them to find lean professionals. The reality for me was, I'm not even, when we started the lean initiative, I was not a lean professional at all. I didn't even know what it was. So I had to go home that night after they asked me to do the job and literally start Googling lean concepts and find out what I was getting myself into. So again, we went to conferences, and that's where we met them. I don't know if you have a better answer, Dr. Olson, of where to find lean professionals.
Yeah, I guess, certainly we have our lean leadership forum that we hold at Cal Poly where lean people get together. Vince, you've been to those sorts of things. And there are, the pay for conferences that lean folks go to. Michael, are you thinking, where should I hang out to get a job, or are you thinking about, where can I hire somebody to do my homework for me? What are you thinking?
No, a little bit of both. I didn't think you were going to go that direction. But, to kind of get involved in a lean-oriented job position, to get some good experience. And then I'm also thinking that when I go back to my home organization, that, I'm probably not going to be able to do this stuff by myself. I'm not going to be able to introduce these concepts just alone. So it'd be nice to have somebody else who's also trained and has a lot more experience, rather than just fresh out of the program.
Right.
That's true.
I think one of the organizations I would get connected to is AME. So it's the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. So they tend to be pretty much the biggest national organization dedicated to lean, and they do conferences and workshops all the time. So if you can get connected with those guys a little bit, probably be worthwhile for you.
Okay, great. That's great advice.
And I don't know if they might have a student rate for membership. Most of those bigger organizations do. I haven't looked at that for a while, but okay.
Great. Yeah.
All right.
Then my next question was, what's going to be your first steps coming up in the next couple of months now that you're new to this organization?
That's a good question right there. So this is my first new job in 12 years. I was at my last company for 12 years. My first 30 days, I was hoping was going to be more about learning. Unfortunately, I'm in a small company now, and they want to move fast. So I had to come in and start decision making within 10 days, which is not something I really wanted to do. I wanted to take 30, 60 days to learn. So what I'm kind of doing, I was telling somebody, it's 2 tracks. Imagine this, all right? So I have 2 different jobs in my mind. One job is I have to appease the guy who hired me, which is the owner of the company. and he wants things moving. So I'm going to have to sort of give up some of my ideal ways to make decisions and just move on a few things because he wants it done and he wants it done now. So I have sort of that track that I'm on, which is I'm going to, with the best of my ability, make good decisions, trust my people, and already just today I signed a check for $5,000 for to get a consultant in to help us build out a facility. I had to trust my facility guy that this is the guy we need. I don't have the time nor honestly the inclination to go out and find whether or not this is a good architect. I don't know. I had to trust this guy. So I don't like doing that. I would have rather have seen some credentials and 3 or 4 options. That's more my style. But so there's that track that I'm on, which is doing about half my time is just making quick decisions. The other half, and this is to me the most important half, is building a sort of a database. I have notes and notes and notes that I've taken, pages of what is going on in the company, what are the service lines, what are the revenue streams, how do the revenue streams tie into those service lines, what are the key metrics that we need to hit. For example, I don't, this is a new business. Now I know, but at first my questions were, how do I know at the end of the day if my clinic was successful? And I asked that question to everybody. I got very poor answers, to be honest with you. But now what I'm building is a spreadsheet of what is success? What does success look like? What are the key metrics? So that my clinic team can go home every night and know whether or not they hit their goals. That's the key. So that's happening on the one end. And I basically, it's boiling down to this. Ready for this? Competency. So I need to know they're competent, which I don't really know right now. And so we're going to be doing competency assessments on all of the key people in the company over the next 60 days. Number 2, clarity, which is that idea of creating goals. What are your actual goals? What should you be doing every day? How do you know if you actually did a good job? You didn't go, nobody got mad, so that was your day. That's actual metrics. So I'm doing a big training at the end of this month. And that training is going to be a 2-day training for all managers in the company. There's about 15 of them. It's going to have about a day's worth of conceptual training. What are the lean concepts? Why are we doing what we're going to be doing? Day 2 is going to be hands-on. Here's some tools that you're going to start doing. And that's going to include daily metrics and visual management that they're going to put up in their clinic. So that is sort of my foundation for the next 60 days is, on one hand, making the quick decisions I need to make. On the other hand, building a program that's going to be sustainable for the next year. So that I think is the key.
All right, good.
Awesome. That's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
I had one more question actually to tag on to that, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yep.
When you said you were going to be doing competency assessments on all the managers, what is that going to look like?
So what we did, there's a girl here, her name's Maria. She's our process analyst, I think is what they call. I've never even heard that term, but that's what they call her. So I went with it, whatever. So she's actually got a job right now that I've given her, which is to go out. She took the job description for actually our authorizations clerks, our medical assistants, our receptionists, and our frontline managers. Those 4 were the 4 I asked her to start with. So she took those 4 job descriptions and she is going out to each person and asking for a review of that job description by the people that do the job. Is it current? Is it accurate? Is it meaningful? Is there things on here we don't have? Whatever. So step 1 is going to be to update a job description. Step 2 is going to be create a competency assessment around that job description. So if the job description says that they're supposed to submit billing reports every day to finance, then competency assessment is, do they know how to actually run and submit said report? So it's going to match up almost perfectly with the job description. Then we're going to take those, and probably it's going to take 30 days for us to go to each manager and literally watch them do these tasks. And in a bigger company, if I had 1,000 employees, I might not be able to pull this off, but I have 170, and there's only about 100 that are in that area that need those competency assessments. So I should be able to pull that off in about 60 days. I have a team of a trainer and Maria, who is our process. Those 2, I've given them this job. And so that's the key to what this is going to look like.
All right.
Excellent. I like it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, excellent. Any other questions for Vince? Cassie, I think your hand's still up in case you want to go ahead and lower that. And Michael, if you want to lower yours if you're done with questions. Okay. All right. Well, Vince, so I want to sort of wrap up. We've now done about 30 minutes worth of chatting and talking. It seems like it goes really fast.
It does.
Which is fun talking about this. Sounds like you're really passionate about what you do. So I always try to wrap up with this question. So we've got a bunch of students on the line here. So what advice would you give students that are just starting out on their lean journey? So you've kind of way down the road. What's your advice for these guys?
Okay, this might be a couple minutes, okay, because I have a couple pieces of advice.
Okay, that's okay. It's more value.
Number one is I think it's important to learn these tools, but not just the tools, the reason for the tools. That's the more important thing. So when I left my last job, I left 5 facilitators who had only been in it a year. And I turned one of them into sort of a part-time director. And I felt a little bad leaving these guys. And what I told them, I said, in the big picture, here's what I want you to remember is that the tool itself is not important as the reason for the tool. So be flexible with the tools and be rigid with the concept. So for example, the concept of visual management, right? Like that, the concept works. You need to have it. How it looks and the exact things you have up, those can be flexible. It doesn't matter if you make adjustments to those. Right. But as long as you're hitting the reason for visual management and why do you have it in the first place? What's the concept behind it? Why do you even have it? So I would tell everybody, be ready to be flexible with the tools because every organization is different. Some are fast moving, some are slow moving. Some you're going to have CEOs that want 100 things in front of them before they make the decision. Some you're going to have like my boss who literally will make a decision in about 10 seconds on the phone and then wonder why it's not implemented. So you're going to have all different kinds of bosses and different kinds of cultures. So be flexible, but be rigid with the concepts because the concepts work. The concept of how you do process improvement, the concept of eliminating waste, the concept of doing data. Why do you need the data? Why, all of those things. As a matter of fact, with data, let me give you one more thing on that too. So with data, what I've learned is when I was a quality director, I really, really, really wanted strong, statistically accurate data, right? That was my big thing, is it's statistically accurate. And as a lean director, I kind of threw that out the window. And what I learned in lean is that what you really want is consistent data. I'm not so worried about the statistical accuracy of what I'm worried about is it being measured consistently and can I look for trends? Because what happens is, especially when you're first starting in a lean organization, like I'm in healthcare. So those of you that go into manufacturing, you're going to find yourselves in a much tighter ship already, right? Everything's being run a little more tight. In healthcare, we're just starting lean. So everything is all over the map. Data is everywhere. And forget Six Sigma. We're lucky to have, data that's even fairly accurate at this point. So where we are is just trying to find consistently measurable data that we can go back to and know if our improvement actually worked or not. And that's our starting gate. So it's weird. You would think healthcare is ahead of the game on data, but we're really not. Only the clinical stuff. If you say what percentage of your actually, honestly, even not even there. If you ask what percentage of your patients, of your diabetics have a controlled hemoglobin A1C, I guarantee every physician out there will give you some percentage. It's probably not accurate, to be honest with you. So I guess I'm even lying on that one. The data's all over the map right now in healthcare. So, but look for consistency in your data. That's not another one. And then the last thing, I wrote myself a note here. And that was recognize that the education you're getting is huge. I didn't get it. I have had to sort of fight my way through a lot of this. And then, luckily for me, there's this tool called Google, and I know how to use it pretty well. So I can find stuff, and I've become members of organizations that allow me to have tools. But learn the tools because the education is huge. But remember, when you get to the real world and you're working in a real job, it changes. And like Michael said, you're going to have issues if you're trying to push things down people's throat. So have tools that you know work, know the concepts, and know the tools well enough that you can pull them out and use them when needed. But be ready to learn the culture of a company before you start using stuff. You know the concept of pull in lean, and here's the deal: you want to get pull. You want people to want to come to you and get it, because then you're going to get their buy-in. And if you're pushing tools to them, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way, you're not going to get support, you're not going to get buy-in, you're going to find yourself banging your head against the wall a lot. And that would be my last piece of advice is stop banging your head. Just recognize that process improvement in general is tough, because nobody likes change, even if it's change for the better. I had a girl that, and one last story. I love stories, so I'm going to run along.
All right.
I had a girl, this medical assistant, who was our referral queen. She had this beautiful process that was the best in the company and didn't want it touched at all, but we knew our referral process was broke. So we did a Kaizen event around the referral process, and we brought her in, and we actually, honestly, we did 3 because one didn't work. It was that messed up, even though she thought hers was great, right? So anyway, so on about Thursday of the event, it's a week-long event, she's crying, bawling. And again, I saw a lot of people cry in lean, a lot more than I was comfortable with. But I pulled her out of the room, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, oh my God, you're changing my process. I have the best process. Why would you do this to me? I don't want to have to do this new process on Monday. I'm totally scared. I know, she was so worried. It was amazing. And I said, I'll be there with you. We're going to help you. Don't worry. So I calmed her down. She started that process. Here's the cool part. When I left CHC, she was the #1 biggest advocate for the new process. She loved it. She said it saved her 15 hours of work every week. So, here's this person who was doing a good job and is now doing a great job and did not want she didn't want to be there. Her attitude was bad on the Kaizen event. The whole thing. And here she's a huge advocate. So just recognize, even people that are your best people are not always going to want to change. So you're going to have to, that's kind of that facilitator thing in lean. You're going to have to prove to people that the process is better and walk them through it. And once they get it, they get it. And then you're done and you get to walk away and you got an advocate.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is really great. And like I said, I think one of the things that comes through, and one of the reasons I enjoy talking to you, is your passion for this stuff really comes through.
Oh, yeah.
And you're 3 years into your lean journey. I can't wait to see you at 13 years in.
Right?
It'll be fantastic, right?
You will.
All right, Vince. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to some little lecture-y kind of slides. Nothing as exciting.
Thank you for having me.
But thank you for talking to the students.
I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Take care, Vince. Bye-bye. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that get the lecture piece there. Let's see.